Thank you everyone for being here this morning. My name is Craig Doberstein with CPD Solutions. I've been helping the city and ecology and the Stormwater Center with planning and organizing this conference, so we're really happy to see the turnout. This morning, our first presentation in the pavilion is a bit of lessons learned from a few Phase I jurisdictions on their recent and really ongoing code and manual updates. This is sort of a complement to the discussion yesterday afternoon for those of you that were here on the LID and MR5 implementation. But today, with obviously a shorter time period, we're really just trying to capture a snapshot of the highlights from a few Phase I representatives. So hopefully you'll get some valuable lessons out of this that you can write down and follow up with them as needed. We'll try to leave 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the session, and I just want to remind people we'll try to end for sure 10 minutes to the hour so you have time to get to your next session if you're leaving the room. So with that, I want to introduce our panel members. First is Mieke Hoppin from the city of Tacoma, Sherell Ehlers from the city of Seattle, Dennis Dixon from Pierce County, and Mark Wilgus from King County. So I'll let Mieke start off, and we're just going to go through each of their highlights, and then we'll have some Q&A. So, Mieke?
I'm Mieke Hoppin with the City of Tacoma. I'm the project lead for our Stormwater Management Manual update, and I'm with the environmental programs. Just going to give you a little bit of history about the City of Tacoma's stormwater manuals. Our first manual was October 1995. And that was in response to the 1995 NPDES permit. Next up, we have the 2003, which was in response to the 1995 NPDES permit. The 2008 manual was in response to the 2007-2012 permit. We did a 2012 update, which was just response to local questions, community concerns. So it was strictly a City of Tacoma update. And then our draft manual we submitted in May. So this is just a little background about the City of Tacoma and maybe why we're a little different. About 72% of our watersheds drain to flow control exempt water bodies. Got about 500 miles of pipe, and if you know anything about the permits, and minimum requirement number 5 can be applied a little bit differently depending upon your discharge location. So our requirements are a little different for discharges to flow control water bodies versus not flow control water bodies or flow control bodies, I guess is what you'd call them. So right on to the lessons learned. Biggest one is communication. Communicate early, communicate often, communicate with as many people as you can communicate with. Let people know this manual is coming. Let people know what's in the manual. Let people know why we have this manual. Let people know why we have a permit. Just communicate the importance of the permit, the importance of this manual. Hopefully it'll make things easier for you. It doesn't always do that, but it's always good to communicate. Have lots of public meetings. I would say we probably didn't have as many as we should have. I think we only had 2. But it's good to have lots of public meetings. The public have a lot of good concerns and a lot of good questions, which help you write your manual. Talk early to your council. They're the reps for the public, so they kind of give you direction on what sort of community you are, what sort of community you want to be. Are you a developer-friendly community? Are you an innovative community? Do you have regional concerns? They kind of should help direct which way your manual is going. Talk to ecology. They write the permit, they write the SWIM that you're trying to be equivalent to, so if you have any questions, you should just call them up and talk to them. I think that was really important for me, in particular, to really have a very open dialogue with them. And talk to your other permittees. I think we met a few times about, hey, this is what we're doing in our manual. What are you guys thinking of doing in your manual? Are we totally on the same page? Are we totally different? I mean, you should be somewhat different because every community has their own concerns, but it's really great to just kind of get feedback. What did ecology say to you? What is your public saying to you? You can get a lot of good tips from other permittees because they're going through the exact same process as you are. User-friendly is key. Try to make your manual as user-friendly as possible. It's not easy, but try. These are just a few little things that we developed in the city of Tacoma, or some of them are things that we want to develop in hopes of making the manual user-friendly. We have short-form stormwater site plans and stormwater pollution prevention plans. There's going to be a little picture of what those look like in a second. And they're kind of check boxes for developers to easily fill out the information for these smaller projects. We have tons of flowcharts. I think we have like 6 flowcharts. Flowcharts are just an easy way to figure out what your minimum requirements are. People like that, a nice easy thing to pull out of the manual so you don't have to read. I mean, the manuals literally are that thick, so it's nice to have just a single page where you can kind of hopefully quickly figure out what you're looking to do. We haven't developed these other things, but I'm hoping to develop a number of tip sheets, lots of handouts, example projects, hoping to also develop a small project swim, so just a minimum requirement 1 through 5 swim that'll be kind of prettier pictures, larger font, easier to use for people that don't have to be an engineer to do their projects. Lots more, it'll have a lot more pictures, hopefully. Let's see, so this is kind of like the last slide. These are some of the tools that we developed. I talked a little bit about the SSP short form and SWIP short form. We have sizing tables for, I think, all of the minimum requirement number 5 BMPs, so someone could just pick a size off of a table instead of having to do the calculation themselves. So we did a lot of calculations ahead of time, pre-sized tables. We have a soils report appendix, which I think is like a 6-page appendix that describes, hey, if you're using this BMP, infiltration trench. Okay, I think I want to use an infiltration trench. Do I need a soils report? And then it'll tell you, yes, you do. And then the things that you might need in that soils report. That was something that our plan review staff said would be really helpful. So I tried to develop something that would be, really easy for someone to say, hey, what sort of soils report do I need if I'm planning on doing X, Y, or Z? And then again, flowcharts, and I'll probably develop even more flowcharts. Here's just a little shot of the stormwater site plan report short form. I think this is one of the pages. So you can see literally everything is a checkbox. So we wrote the words for you. You just check off the words that go along with your project. Hopefully it'll be helpful. Obviously we haven't implemented this yet, but we'll see. Here's just the minimum requirement number 5 flowchart. Just flowcharts that guide you quickly through the process to figure out what you actually need to do for a project. I think they're really helpful. Here's just a little snapshot of that soils report appendix I was talking about. So it says, downspout full infiltration. Yes, you're required to have a soils report. Here's what's required to be in it. And that's kind of all for lessons learned. It's really important to communicate, really important to make it user-friendly. All you can do, try your best. It's not a really easy thing to develop a manual, but communication's key. You'll be surprised at who has great ideas. I was always surprised. It's like, wow, that person has this wonderful idea. I wouldn't necessarily have thought of going to the building department and they'd have some wonderful idea about soils infiltration testing, but you never know. So communicate with everybody. And I think that's all I have.
Hi, my name is Sherelle Ehlers. I'm with the City of Seattle, and I'm the project lead for updating our stormwater code and manual. I just wanted to go through some of the history of Seattle. We've had a drainage code since 1979, and we've been requiring flow control since that time in areas that did not direct discharge to the direct receiving water bodies. We've also allowed GSI for flow control since 2000, so we didn't have a lot of instances when people were using GSI, but it was allowed since 2000. In 2009, we required GSI, or Green Stormwater Infrastructure, or Low Impact Development, BMPs, since 2009. And it actually is similar to the requirements that ecology has right now. It's an a la carte approach as opposed to a more prescriptive approach that ecology has. And so this time we are updating our manual and code to be consistent with ecology's MR5 approach, which is the prescriptive approach. Just going through some of the lessons learned, one of the things we did was had a meeting with what we called our frequent flyers and asked them what was working and what wasn't. And that was a very productive meeting. So ask people, you know, what's going on, what works, and take the time, because it was really fruitful. And they really appreciated that we came and talked to them and, you know, reached out to them. One of the things we really heard loud and clear is that we had our requirements all over in our manual. There were some in just different areas. I have this lovely slide if I could share with you if we had more time, but one of the things they said was just put all your minimum requirements up front and tell us exactly what we need to do and make it super clear, and you know, instead of burying, they felt like we were burying things, which wasn't our intention, but I think it was the evolution over time of how our documents were developed. The other thing we've really learned is just having an inclusive team, including your plan review staff, transportation, and your O&M folks, and really getting buy-off with them. You know, and one of the things is just starting early, like Mieke said, and really defining roles and responsibility, and then who makes the final decision on what's going to be in the manual, because things get derailed and sidelined, and you need to have a clear decision path on who gets to make the final decision, instead of a lot of infighting between all the different people that you've brought in in the first place. Another thing that we really learned in our 2009 manual, we had a lot of guidance documents, guidance language in it, and that was because GSI, Green Stormwater Infrastructure, LID, wasn't, you know, people didn't know how to do it that much. And so we were trying to be helpful and put a lot of guidance information in there. But as a plan reviewer and as an engineer or a developer, that wasn't super helpful, because people just want you to cut to the chase. So whatever you can, just cut to the chase, you know, say it once, you know, don't put it in one place and then put it in another place and maybe have the words just a little bit different, because then you have this lovely war between people. And so just say it once and say it simply. That was a big thing that we really learned. From our 2009 update, and for this one, we're going to provide training and set clear expectations on when you're updating your code and manual, what you're going to be doing for training. For us, for my part, I feel like it's my role to explain the differences between the existing code and manual and what the new code manual changes are going to be. But that isn't enough training. So we have what we call train the trainer kind of philosophy. So training supervisors and managers on what the rules are and how to do it, and then having it be their responsibility to disseminate that information downstream, instead of expecting, you know, me to come in front of staff where they don't trust me, or, you know, I'm not their supervisor, I don't do their job. And so it's really important to kind of have that train the trainer kind of attitude and methodology. Also, we just, when we brought people in, we created standards, and I say in the past tense because like I said, we've been doing this since 2009, and we've created a lot of standards, and you really have to get the transportation department bought into what you're doing and make decisions and have everybody buy off, and not have, like, draft documents are not very helpful, because then staff feels like they can override some of those things. So having documents and standards that are really succinct and bought off on. And then developing implementation tools. We've developed some of those similar to what Mieke said, and I'll go through a couple of those. And then other things we've really learned is tracking, and how you're going to track in GIS these infrastructure pieces. And so I'll talk a little bit more on that. And then having a really robust website so that you are going out and talk, so that people can come and look at your draft documents and understand what you're doing, what you're changing. I also agree with having lots of public meetings and then also going out to constituents that you know want to know about this, so ACEC, APWA, the master builders, and just going and getting in front of them and hearing what they have to say and hearing what their concerns are and taking that time. And so that when you go to adopt, you're not going to have the last minute council kerfuffle. As far as tools, some of the tools that we've created are this infiltration evaluation map, which I can show you, on-site calculator, which I'll run through, and feasibility checklists, standard plan sheets, and standard details, and then some GSI standards. And by all means, steal as much as you want and can, and look at what everybody else has done, and ask for source documents, and steal as much, steal, because why should we recreate the wheel if somebody else has already done it? So one thing we did in our mind, this is Ecology's MR5, but it's in a table approach, and so this is something that it felt more comfortable to present it this way in our code and manuals instead of the approach that Ecology has written it out, but it's intended to be similar. There are some tweaks for Seattle. We've added some BMPs and things like this, but we just put it in this table approach, so you could consider that. This is an infiltration evaluation map, and it says where you have to evaluate infiltration. And the green areas, we've determined where you have to evaluate infiltration, but it's based on either LIDAR, our existing topography. We also have lots of boring information that we've pieced together to create this map. So if you have specific information that you can piece together and work with Ecology for them to buy off on this approach, it's something I really recommend, because if you can't infiltrate because there's a steep slope or you have all these issues, you don't want your development community to spend all that time and money doing testing when there is no reason to do it in the first place. We also have an on-site calculator. Like Tacoma, we've developed pre-size tables, and we have put these in a calculator so that applicants just can take their surface area, and you have sizing for each BMP, and it tells you how big something needs to be depending on how much impervious surface you have going to that particular BMP. And we've heard a lot of good feedback that this has been really helpful for applicants, and the smaller ones that aren't doing the full-blown drainage report, they really do appreciate having this straightforward kind of calculator for them. We also have created checklists for plan review and for helping out the plan reviewers and helping out the developers so that they can go through and easily see why they can check what is infeasible or what isn't infeasible, and that's helped a lot with people. We've created a standard plan sheet, and it's similar to what Tacoma has done, and just for those small projects where we don't require an engineer, and just having the basic BMPs that people use, we found that really helpful and straightforward. We also have an erosion control sheet as well that has a soil amendment plan, and so they can show their soil amendment and how much compost they may have to bring in to amend their soils, and so we're really trying to facilitate that. And the details, you need to work through the details, get buy-off from your Department of Transportation, and it's all the little things that are important that you have to go through. And so you can see all of these details: curb cuts, bioretention with underdrains, bioretention without underdrains, how you plant a tree within the bioretention cell, and it's all this minutia that takes a lot and lots of time, and people have lots and lots of opinion on it, so just be prepared for that. The GSI tools, and incorporating, like deciding early on how you're going to bring those assets into your system and how you're going, what are you going to call them and how you're going to lay them out. So, going from the plan, taking it off the plan, and how it's going to look in GIS. And then the type of information you want to collect in your in GIS, if it's the infiltration rate, if it's the size, who owns it. I mean, there's just, some people want to collect the world on this information, and so, what's reasonable. So those are some of the things that we've developed so far through our experience.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Dixon. I'm an engineer with Surface Water Management in Pierce County, and I've been the project manager for our site development manual for the past 10 years. So we're on our third cycle right now on developing yet another stormwater manual to meet the NPDES requirements. On our design team, my other project lead is in the room here, Dawn Anderson, who actually does most of our LID implementation. She's the expert on that. We also have a consulting team that helps us quite a bit, and some of those folks are in the room. If you need references, you can talk to me later about how we've been able to get some help for a jurisdiction that doesn't have a very large program. So we do need additional help and experts to come in and help us with our activities. I want to talk this morning, I'm not going to go over some of the various tools that are being developed. Tacoma and Seattle and King County have done quite a good job on that, where we all tend to mimic each other on a lot of these activities, and we try to steal liberally, and if somebody comes up with a good tool, we try to co-opt it as much as possible. But I do want to talk more, especially with the Phase II communities that are in here today, about some of the things that go into that site development manual work, the development of internal and external stakeholders, estimating the effort and what really is going to be necessary to get this job done, and knowing when you're finished. So when we talk about getting the groups together, we have different stakeholders. We have designers, builders, maintainers, reviewers, plan integration, risk management, long-term ownership, and that's just within the county. And so we have a very broad organization that has quite a different viewpoint on what has to be done. We're going to have people who are designing roads, we have people maintaining roads, we have people who are reviewing other people's work, we have inspectors for our building department, we have inspectors for our site use, we have inspectors for our county projects. All of them have to be on board with how this stormwater manual gets put together. We also have developers, home builders, local communities, environmental concerns, and other Phase II communities that we know that are going to probably be adopting the county manual, the King County manual, or one of the other Phase I manuals. So we have to be cognizant of how it reads with others. It's not just ourselves. And so we've worked to put together stakeholder groups, both internally, so that the county can actually put the first draft out that try to speak with one voice of this is what our proposal is. It speaks a little bit to what Sherelle was saying about who's the decider, who's the decision maker in the process. Somebody has to put that draft in front of your council at some point, and somebody has to draw that line on this is what's going to go into the draft. Knowing that within the rulemaking process, everything is open for change once you get into public comment periods again. So we want to minimize those changes and don't have the manual blow up on us. So because of that, we also want to be meeting regularly with all these stakeholders. And so it's working with the master builders, it's working with our environmental groups, it's working with our local community groups that have worked on our land use advisory plans to make sure that they understand the rules that are there and also make sure everybody understands what a site development manual is. Pierce County's been developing and having site development rules since 1962. That was our first ordinance for when we wanted to actually limit how construction activity came into our right-of-way. And so this predates NPDES. We have an awful lot of legacy in the county on how we do site development. We have things that we look at that are not necessarily the thresholds that are in an NPDES permit. We are concerned when somebody builds a garage and a driveway right next door to their neighbors and where that runoff goes, even if it's less than 2,000 square feet of impervious. So those things matter to the neighbor who is going to receive that. And so we review those activities. So we need to know that this is not just an NPDES permit that we're updating. This is a site development manual that's for the entire county. And so every time we open this up, we get all of those same concerns back again. Are we doing it right? So, and we also need to recognize that each of these groups, subgroups, has their own diversity. So within the county government, we're going to have a difference of opinion for the guy who has to maintain the road versus the guy who's building the road versus the guy that's inspecting the road. We also have that diversity within the development community. We can have the Master Builders Association of Pierce County at the table, but within them, we're going to have people who are designers and developers. We're also going to have home builders. And where the burden of these regulations and permits come in are going to be different. And so there's going to be different points of view even within these organizations that we have to be aware of. So the iterative approach we feel is the best way to get to good policy. We have to keep talking these through and then bringing those ideas back to our internal group, back to the stakeholder group, and through that balance come up with what's going to happen. Estimating the effort going into this is a difficult task, and it's one of those ones that sometimes comes with experience. I didn't have near the gray in my beard when I started this program, and it's usually because what I thought was going to be a simple task was tough. So we start off with a regulation that says, if post-development flow duration exceeds the value of any pre-development flows for 100% of the 2-year, blah, blah, blah. That's easy. Ecology has an app for that. You plug it in, you get the answer. When you say, are we going to install a fence around this facility? That's when the rooms get packed and everybody comes unglued because people want public access to public lands, but we don't want to have a whole bunch of dumping, and we don't want to have to be able to handle waste management. And how do we deal with dog waste? And how do we do all these other things? So the fence is still an issue that I've been working on for over 5 years and haven't got a solution to. Designing that 8%, easy. Calculators do that. The engineers can do that. But it's the public policy piece that's going to get you all wrapped up. We also have issues with on-site inspections. There's requirements in the permits that say we have to do inspections. And again, it's always leading to how much work's going to be done, who's going to be doing that effort, what's going to be in the next permit. Is this leading to yet another requirement that we're going to be hit with? What's going to be the body of work over the horizon? So we're always concerned that we're walking down a path that could be difficult to meet on the next iteration. When we're looking at permit review thresholds, again, it's more than just the NPDES permit. We are looking at reviewing activities that come in. We're looking at permits that come in for buildings. And so we do have thresholds that we have to look at that are less than what the NPDES permit standards are. And we have to figure out how that's going to affect our development center, planning and land services. We have concerns about how we do performance bonds, surety bonds, making sure the project gets done correctly, make sure that if it's not done correctly, we have enough money reserved aside that we can fix it. And then the problem comes, who's going to pay for that and who actually manages that? Which party is going to be responsible? Is it going to be Public Works that has to manage that? Or is it going to be the review team that manages that? Or do we somehow get a private party to come in and manage that? Those are all details that we're still struggling to sort through in the manual that's above and beyond what's in the NPDES permit. So are we there yet? We submitted a package back in June to go for technical equivalency with ecology to say, hey, I think we've got a good plan together. And in August, we see a draft 2014 stormwater manual come out that deals with some of the rulings that came out of the Pollution Control Hearings Board. So we're not there yet. We have a permit draft modification expected out in December. And so the targets keep shifting. For the phase ones, we know that we can find a path through this. For the phase twos that are left with choosing one of the products that gets created by some of the people up here on the desk, I feel for you, because you guys are still kind of waiting to see what comes out of the process. You don't have as much of a stake in manipulating it. But I would encourage you that if you're in one of our communities to talk to us. Get some insight on what we're putting together. Our documents are up on our website. All of Pierce County's work is up on there. If you just type in Stormwater Manual, you'll see all the drafts that we submitted to Ecology, and you can see what's happening. And we also have more training coming. More training again for our internal staff on how to review it, and more training for the public as we get to a final product. So, more to come. Thank you.
My name is Mark Wilgus. I'm with King County, and I've been in charge of our surface water design manual update. These guys all did a great job talking about process, and frankly, listening to particularly Seattle and Dennis, I mean, Mieke as well, I thought to myself, geez, I wish I would have heard this 2 years ago, because that early engagement, although we did it, we did the advisory group meeting, we did all this, we could have done more, we could have done more earlier. And if anybody has a way to compel people to give comments and to sort of understand what their vested interests are early rather than, say, a week before the draft is due to Ecology, I'd appreciate that suggestion as well. Because we certainly ran into that, and there's still a lot of discussion about a few issues. So instead of going through process, oh, and by the way, Sherelle mentioned that Seattle had a lot of boring information. And I just wanted to say, anybody out there who's had any familiarity reading the King County Design Manual would probably disagree that there's any boring information in that. Anyway, I'm gonna kind of go through some content, you know, more like here's some of the changes that we made and considered. So maybe that can help spur some of the discussion when we're done on that end of it. I'm gonna be kind of going through these pretty quick. This is a edited version of what we presented at our advisory group meeting, and I say edited because the advisory group gave us a lot of strong opinions and feelings, and so many of those slides I've already deleted because we made changes based on it. I only have 8 minutes. Everybody knows we're updating this to meet Ecology's 2012 manual, and that's still in flux. We hope to be done soon. I will say that King County's manual is used by a lot of different municipalities, so one of the goals that I was given when we updated it was, you know, to kind of keep it looking a lot like it does now. People, you know, it's kind of been through several iterations. It mostly works. I think people like it. So yeah, keep it looking like it does now, but still get that equivalency from Ecology. I was also told, with regard to these on-site BMP requirements and some of the new things, was be no less protective. Is that right? Be no less protective than we are now, even if we're going to go to this maximum feasible approach, because we had a lot of concerns about that in King County. Let's see. Don't need to know the authors. Pictures are good. We'll skip through. This is an FTP site, which I think we may repost. It only lasts for a couple weeks, so we're continually reposting our drafts. So anybody can contact me, and I can get you a draft or turn you on to it in near future. All right, I've got 5 minutes. All right, so here's, when I broke these out into enhancements, equivalencies, and gray areas when I was doing this advisory group. So enhancements is where we're basically proposing something more protective than Ecology. Equivalency is just what it sounds like. And then gray areas is where it's kind of, it doesn't neatly fall in those two categories. So I'm just going to go through a few of these, hope to spur some discussion after the fact. First one we looked at hazard areas, steep slopes, landslide hazards, and how we were dealing with both infiltration facilities and more particularly BMPs. New emphasis on BMPs, maximum feasible approach. I was really concerned we were going to sort of force people to do geotechnical testing up against steep slopes to prove that they don't have to do it there. And so we made some changes in terms of our feasibility criteria to say, hey, if you're within a couple 100 feet of some of these hazard areas that are, you know, infiltration may have potential to destabilize, we're not going to make you do it when you follow Ecology's list approach. If you really want to do it for some reason, hire your geotech, show us how you can do it, but we're not going to force you to jump through that hoop to arrive at the place where we think probably is the right place to begin with. This is one that generated a lot of discussion. You know, roofing's typically treated as non-pollution generating surfaces, but there's tons of data out there saying just the opposite. Doug Howie's not here from ecology, but he'd probably say that maybe look for that in the next iteration of their, I shouldn't channel him. I don't know what he's going to say. But there's a lot of stuff that comes off of roofing. How we're dealing with that is just a definitional thing. It's not right now we sort of have like particular metal roofs that are considered pollution generating. We're tightening up our definitions. There'll be a list of non-pollution generating roofs in the manual. Most of them are pretty easily available and typical, so it's not a huge change, but if someone, you know, doesn't use one of those, then they're going to have to treat that like pollution generating. On plats, it's not a big deal because you're probably providing water quality for all that water anyway in your combined ponds. This is one that was really ecology has to approve this one still. Doug Howie hasn't reviewed this yet. As you know, there's this full dispersion BMP onto forested areas that allows you to basically mitigate for flow control and water quality. We have a lot of ag areas out there that's pasture. It's never going back to forest. Our King County executive says we want more of this. We want this stuff happening here. So the goal of returning that to forest is sort of a bit contradictory. So what we've done is we're trying to push allowing full dispersion on pasture areas in particular areas. It's not just that I have a farm. It's no, in designated ag areas under certain conditions, which I can't go into right here, but the manual will have all those laid out for you. So what's impervious when you have a liner on the bottom and an under drain? We've made some decisions about that if you line something, you know, with an impermeable liner and you put an under drain in it, we're going to treat it as impervious surface as regards to how we treat impervious in triggering flow control, water quality, those things. Flow control, water quality sizing credits. So this is mostly with regard to BMPs. Currently, King County, if you put in BMPs, you get modeling credit to reduce the size of your flow control facility. These are also going to apply to most BMPs as a way to shrink the size of your water quality facility as well, to take into account the fact that you're losing some of that water to ground through infiltration. This is just, we're trying to figure out what software to use. King County is moving away from our KCRTS software. See a lot of tears out there. Actually, it was a good program, but we can't keep supporting it, particularly with the new LID requirements. These I'm going to go through real quick. These are things that ecology or equivalencies. Replaced impervious is now targeted on non-redevelopment projects. Their maximum feasible approach to flow control BMP implementation. In difference to them, we're going to provide more or propose a more cafeteria approach rather than their top-down list, and we're also going to continue to require a minimum level of BMP implementation on lots, which ecology doesn't do. We're concerned, and I need another minute. Don't raise that card. Flow control, so we're concerned in King County that with all the till soils, we're going to have people infeasible their way out of BMPs altogether. And currently we require minimum BMP applications. We're going to keep that in our book, but we're giving you BMPs to meet those minimums that aren't tied to soil criteria, and that's retaining native vegetation or reducing the footprint of your site relative to what zoning allows. I think I'm almost done. LID performance modeling required for 5-acre and larger lots in the rural areas. That doesn't work for our rural customers. We're going to provide an alternative list approach of BMPs for that. We have special programs trying to keep the costs low and non-engineer some of this stuff out in the rural areas, so we want to continue with that. We deleted no longer vegetated roofs in our manual as a required BMP. We didn't see a lot of them. Bioretention is a new one. That's the ecology design requirements. Hey, and I made it.